Vanessa moved through the pediatric ward with practiced grace, her warm smile and steady hands offering comfort to even the most frightened child. She had been a nurse for nearly 15 years, and while the job was exhausting, it gave her purpose. She was the kind of woman who remembered birthdays, who stayed past her shift for children without visitors, who whispered lullabies into ears worn down by pain. It was a Tuesday afternoon when she saw him. He sat alone at the end of the hallway, a small boy with hollow blue eyes and thinning blonde hair. His frame was too thin for his age, and the hospital gown hung from his shoulders like a ghost of clothing. Nurses passed him by. Doctors charted his name without looking twice. Vanessa stopped. "Hi there," she said gently, kneeling beside his chair. "What's your name?" He didn't answer, just stared ahead like he was waiting for someone who had never arrived. A staff member walked past. "That's Lucas," she whispered. "Dropped off at the ER last week. No parents. Social services is coming eventually." Eventually. Vanessa sat beside the boy, silent. She didn't press him to speak. She didn't ask questions. She just sat. And when his small hand finally reached for hers, something shifted in her heart. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. She went home that night and couldn't sleep. She told her husband, Gregory, about the boy. A devout man with deep eyes and an even deeper patience. Gregory listened. He didn't say much, just held her hand and nodded. The next day, she returned to the hospital with a lunch packed for two. Lucas still wouldn't speak, but he accepted the sandwich. And that was enough. Days became weeks. She learned that his silence was not empty. It was armored. His bruises told more than his words ever could. People warned her. "He's not your responsibility. You'll get too attached. It's complicated." But Vanessa didn't flinch. She filed paperwork. She made phone calls. And one quiet Thursday morning, she signed the adoption papers that made Lucas legally hers. There was no parade, no applause, just a small boy standing in her living room, clutching a stuffed bear, and a woman who had already given him her heart. From that day forward, she wasn't just Nurse Moore. She was Mom. The house on Maple Avenue was never the largest, nor the fanciest, but it held warmth in every corner. Vanessa and Gregory made sure of that. Lucas had his own room, painted a soft blue with white stars stenciled across the ceiling. The first night he slept there, Vanessa left the door cracked open and a night light on. She didn't sleep much, just listened. When the morning came and he was still there, her chest swelled with quiet relief. Gregory, a high school math teacher, took on extra tutoring jobs. Vanessa picked up night shifts and holiday hours. Every dollar they earned was stretched across groceries, school supplies, doctor visits, and the little joys that made a childhood feel like more than survival. Lucas never wore designer shoes, but he had clean ones that fit. He didn't vacation overseas, but he camped with Gregory in their backyard and roasted marshmallows by a fire pit made from bricks Gregory hauled one by one. They taught him kindness before ambition, manners before milestones. Gregory showed him how to change a tire. Vanessa taught him how to pray. When Lucas brought home his first B+ on a spelling test, they put it on the fridge like a trophy. Still, some things weren't easy to erase. Lucas sometimes flinched at loud voices. He asked questions with hesitation, as if bracing for punishment. At school, when asked to draw his family, he'd look around and hesitate. He noticed skin tones. He noticed other people's questions. "Is that your real mom?" they'd ask. Lucas would look down, unsure of how to respond. Vanessa never pushed him. She answered when asked, smiled when ignored, and showed up to every parent-teacher meeting, every recital, every scraped knee moment. She packed lunches with notes inside. She waited at the window until the school bus came back. Years passed. The boy who once wouldn't speak began to talk too fast when excited. He asked for seconds at dinner. He hugged Vanessa without prompting. He called her mom. Vanessa's nursing career slowed when Lucas entered high school. She turned down a chance at hospital administration. Gregory asked her once, gently, why. Her answer was simple. Because Lucas needs us here more than the hospital does. They cut corners to pay for Lucas's private school. Vanessa sold her grandmother's ring. Gregory let go of his vintage record collection. They gave everything they could, not out of obligation, but love. And all the while, Vanessa believed it would be enough. That love would root deep and grow strong. That a boy once abandoned would one day understand what it took to raise him. She was wrong, but not yet. The change came slowly, like autumn shadows stretching longer each day. First, it was small things. Lucas stopped saying thank you after dinner. He spent more time in his room with the door closed. He avoided family game nights, saying he had homework, though his grades no longer showed it. By the time he turned 16, he had outgrown his old politeness. He walked with a slouch, talked with impatience, and gave answers that sounded like afterthoughts. Vanessa tried to brush it off as normal teenage rebellion, but something deeper was shifting. He rolled his eyes when she called him sweetheart. He flinched when Gregory offered advice. Vanessa would find laundry left on the floor, dishes crusted with food in the sink, and silence where laughter used to be. She tried not to cry, at least not where he could see. Lucas began spending time with a new crowd. Boys who wore flashy shoes and laughed too loudly, who smoked behind the gym and talked down to teachers. Vanessa noticed how he mimicked their mannerisms, their walk, their slang. When she asked about them, Lucas snapped, "You wouldn't get it." And maybe he was right. She didn't recognize the young man standing in front of her. At 17, Lucas got into a small college out of state. Vanessa and Gregory were proud. They hugged him, cried, packed his bags with care. But Lucas didn't seem to care for their emotion. He shrugged off their advice like an old coat. "I've got this," he said, as if he'd raised himself. When he left, the house felt colder. Vanessa would sit on the couch and look at old photos. Lucas as a toddler in her lap, Lucas in a Halloween costume, Gregory stitched together. She would press her hand to the image, remembering how tightly he used to cling to her skirt. Phone calls were short and increasingly rare. On holidays, he stayed away. Gregory died before Lucas ever made it back home. Vanessa called him after the funeral. He picked up after 4 rings, voice flat. "I'm sorry," he said, but didn't ask how she was. Didn't offer to come. Didn't ask what happened. Just said he had exams. Then ended the call with, "Take care." Vanessa stood by the window for hours that night, watching the streetlights flicker. The man she had raised no longer saw her as his mother. He saw her as something that belonged to the past, something to be tolerated, not cherished. But even in her heartbreak, she didn't stop loving him. Love was not a contract. It was a decision. And Vanessa had made hers years ago. Gregory Moore had been strong, not just in body but in spirit. He was the kind of man who never raised his voice but always made himself heard. When he fell ill, it was sudden, violent headaches, confusion, then the hospital. Vanessa stayed by his side every moment, holding his hand, whispering prayers into the sterile white air. They said it was a stroke, but something felt off. Gregory had told the nurse about the wrong medication being administered. Vanessa had overheard it too. There were mistakes in the chart, confusion in the dosage. The attending doctor brushed it off, but Gregory's condition worsened. He died 2 days later. Vanessa didn't scream when they told her. She simply nodded, placed a blanket over Gregory's legs, and kissed his forehead one last time. In the weeks that followed, while Lucas stayed away, Vanessa began quietly gathering records. She requested files, called medical friends, and pieced together the timeline. The evidence mounted quickly. There had been negligence. Fatal one. She filed a lawsuit without telling anyone. Not her friends at church. Not her neighbors. And certainly not Lucas. The hospital tried to settle early, but Vanessa held firm. With the help of a relentless attorney, she pursued it until the courtroom gave her what she was owed. $9.5 million. She didn't celebrate. There was no champagne, no new car, no vacation. The money went into a private account under a name only she recognized. She visited the bank in person, signed in careful cursive, and kept the checks in a small lockbox at the back of her closet. Her house remained the same. The curtains she had sewn by hand still framed the windows. The couch Gregory used to nap on stayed untouched. She didn't upgrade the television. She didn't even fix the crack in the driveway. Lucas never called to ask how she was holding up. Never came home. In her heart, Vanessa grieved twice, once for her husband, and once for the boy she had raised. There were moments she stood in front of the mirror, wondering if she had done too much. If in giving Lucas everything, she had left him with nothing to fight for. But she never regretted loving him. She only regretted that he no longer seemed capable of returning it. The money remained untouched for years. People might have thought Vanessa had nothing. They didn't know she carried a secret not of wealth, but of strength, strategy, and silence. She had suffered in silence, mourned in silence, and now, she waited in silence. Because she understood something Lucas did not. The most powerful moves are made without a sound. It was a gray Sunday afternoon when Vanessa heard the knock at her front door. She had just finished watering the ferns on her porch, still wearing her gardening gloves, when she opened it to find a face she hadn't seen in years. Lucas. He looked older, more polished. His hair was slicked back, his smile crisp and rehearsed. Beside him stood a tall woman with flawless makeup and a sharp black blazer. Her heels clicked on the wooden porch, though she smiled like they were old friends. "Hi, Mom," Lucas said casually, as if no time had passed. Vanessa's heart tightened at the word. He hadn't called her that in over 5 years. "This is Jessica," he added, placing a hand on the woman's back. "She's my girlfriend. She's an attorney." Jessica reached out. Her handshake was firm. "It's such a pleasure to finally meet you, Mrs. Moore. Lucas has told me so much about you." Vanessa nodded, unsure of what to feel. "Come in," she said softly, stepping aside. The house hadn't changed. The same scent of lavender and lemon oil hung in the air. Lucas looked around with a distant smile, as if he were visiting a museum of his childhood. Jessica complimented everything, the doilies, the framed photos, even the chipped coffee mugs. "We were hoping," Lucas began as they sat down, "to reconnect. I know I've been distant, but we've been doing a lot of thinking. About family. About the future." Vanessa listened quietly, her hands folded in her lap. Jessica leaned forward. "You've built such a beautiful life, Mrs. Moore. Lucas told me how hard you worked, how much you sacrificed. We thought it might be good to help you organize your estate. Make sure everything is secure, legally speaking." Lucas nodded. "We just want to make sure things are protected. In case anything ever happens. No pressure, of course." They stayed for hours. Lucas laughed at old stories like he used to. Jessica helped Vanessa cook dinner and even washed the dishes. When they left that evening, they hugged her like family. Vanessa stood at the door for a long time after they drove off. Part of her wanted to believe it, that her son had changed, that the coldness in his eyes had melted into something real, that this beautiful, successful woman beside him had helped him remember his roots. But another part of her, the part that had lived through Gregory's death, that had seen the darkness of betrayal, remained quiet and alert. She didn't know why Lucas had really come back, but she would find out. Over the next few weeks, Jessica visited Vanessa often. She brought legal papers, brochures about trusts and wills, and cups of coffee from the corner cafe. Her presence was polished and persuasive, like a gentle current that pulled Vanessa deeper into unfamiliar waters. "Just a few signatures," Jessica said one afternoon, spreading out documents on the dining table. "Mostly formalities. Nothing you need to worry about." Vanessa glanced at the pages. Legal jargon swirled across the paper, dense and confusing. Jessica patiently explained some terms, but others she brushed off with a smile. Vanessa felt overwhelmed, but trusted Jessica's calm demeanor. Lucas sat nearby, watching with an expectant smile. "This is just to make sure your assets are protected, Mom," he said. "We want to keep everything safe, for you and for the family." Vanessa hesitated. The memory of Gregory's lawsuit and the settlement she'd kept secret flickered in her mind. The thought of her home, the sanctuary she had built, being at risk made her heart pound. But Jessica's reassuring tone and Lucas's warm eyes eased her doubts. Slowly, Vanessa picked up the pen and signed her name on the dotted lines. Days passed, and Vanessa did not think much about the papers. She believed she had done what was necessary to secure her future. What she did not know was that the documents she signed quietly transferred the deed of her home to Lucas. The change was subtle, silent, but it would soon echo loudly. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the street as Vanessa pulled into the driveway. Her hands trembled slightly, clutching the worn keys she had used for years. She paused at the door, a strange unease creeping over her. The quietness of the neighborhood felt heavier than usual. When she slid the key into the lock, it refused to turn. She tried again. Nothing. Panic began to prick at her chest. She jiggled the handle, pulled hard, but the door didn't budge. Her heart sank as she realized the locks had been changed. Just then, footsteps approached from behind. Vanessa turned slowly, her eyes meeting Lucas's. His expression was cold, unreadable. "It's not personal, Vanessa," he said, voice calm but firm. "It's time to move on." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. The boy she had raised, who had once clung to her with desperate hope, now stood before her as a stranger. The same hands she had held through every night of sickness now locked her out of the home she had built. Tears welled in her eyes. "Lucas, please, why?" she whispered. He looked away, unwilling to meet her gaze. "This is for the best. You have your settlement money. You don't need this house." The bitter sting of betrayal cut deep. Vanessa's mind raced. How could the boy she loved so fiercely turn against her so coldly? The home was more than bricks and mortar. It was the place where she had poured her soul. The only place that felt safe in a world that had been unkind. With a heavy heart, Vanessa turned away. She did not argue or plead. The pain was sharp, but beneath it, a small flame of determination sparked. That night, she slept in her car. The seats were hard and cold, and the darkness pressed close. But Vanessa held on to hope, wrapping it tightly around her heart like a shield. In the days that followed, she moved to a cheap motel on the edge of town. The walls were thin, the bed worn, but it was shelter. Each night, she sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker, planning her next move. Vanessa's grief was fierce, but so was her resolve. She had a fortune hidden away, a secret she had kept to herself all these years. Quietly, she began to make calls, reaching out to lawyers and advisors who could help her fight back. The woman who had been locked out of her home was not broken. She was gathering strength, preparing to reclaim not only the house but the dignity that had been stolen from her. Lucas might have thought he had won, but Vanessa Moore was far from defeated. She was just getting started. The thin walls of the motel room did little to block the sounds of the night. The distant hum of traffic, the occasional shout from the parking lot, and the low creak of the ceiling fan all blended into a restless symphony. Vanessa sat on the edge of the worn bed, her fingers intertwined tightly, eyes fixed on the small coffee table cluttered with papers and a flickering lamp. This was not where she had ever imagined her life would be. Not at this age, not after everything she had sacrificed. Memories flooded her mind. The hospital rooms where she had worked tirelessly as a nurse, the late nights spent rocking Lucas to sleep, the warmth of Gregory's hand in hers as they built their family. And now, the cold sting of betrayal from the son she had loved unconditionally. But beneath the exhaustion and pain, a new force surged through Vanessa. This was not the end, it was a beginning. She opened a folder filled with legal documents, letters from attorneys, and notes from her calls. Quietly, over the past few days, she had put her plan into motion. The $9.5 million settlement from Gregory's medical malpractice case, the money she had kept hidden, was no longer a secret. It was her weapon, her shield. With the help of a determined legal team she hired, Vanessa was preparing to take on Lucas and Jessica. The documents they had tricked her into signing were going to be scrutinized, challenged, and torn apart. The house, her home, was just the start. She was fighting for her dignity, her legacy, and the truth. Despite the modest surroundings, Vanessa's spirit was unyielding. She had learned long ago that strength was not measured by comfort or wealth alone, but by the courage to stand firm when everything else seemed lost. Each day brought new challenges but also small victories. Calls with her lawyers, strategy meetings, and quiet moments of reflection filled her hours. Vanessa found solace in her resilience and clarity in her purpose. Jessica's charm and Lucas's cold confidence had underestimated the woman they tried to erase. Vanessa was more than a victim. She was a force to be reckoned with. As the days turned into weeks, Vanessa's plan took shape. The quiet motel room became a command center for justice. Every step forward was a reminder that no matter how dark the night, dawn always followed. Lucas had cast her out, but Vanessa was about to show him that she could rise, not just survive, but thrive. The morning sunlight spilled through the dusty curtains of Vanessa's motel room, casting long shadows across the scattered legal files and her resolute face. This was no longer just a fight for a house. It was a battle for justice, for truth, for everything she had built and endured. The air was thick with tension, but Vanessa felt a calm certainty inside her, sharper and steadier than ever before. Her legal team had uncovered more than she expected. Forged signatures, hidden motives, and a trail of deceit connecting Lucas and Jessica's carefully crafted lies. They were ready to expose every bit of it. Vanessa's heart beat steady with the knowledge that the truth was on her side. The courtroom became a stage where Vanessa transformed from the betrayed mother to the commanding force no one anticipated. She sat tall, her eyes unwavering as the opposing attorney tried to undermine her resolve. But every lie Lucas told crumbled under the weight of evidence. Every manipulation Jessica attempted was revealed as calculated greed. The media caught wind of the case quickly. Headlines splashed across newspapers and online news sites told the story of the adopted son, who betrayed the woman who raised him, painting Vanessa as a symbol of quiet strength and unyielding love. Support poured in from all corners. Messages, phone calls, and even strangers offering help. She was no longer alone in this fight. Lucas, once confident and smug, grew desperate. His arrogance cracked as witnesses testified and documents surfaced. The courtroom buzzed with a mix of disbelief and sympathy. Vanessa's composure never faltered, her dignity intact amid the chaos. Outside, cameras flashed, reporters whispered, and the world watched the battle unfold. Vanessa's story touched something deep in many hearts, about family, betrayal, and the power of standing up for oneself. As the trial progressed, it became clear that Vanessa was not just reclaiming a house. She was reclaiming her narrative, her self-worth, and her future. The fight was exhausting, but it ignited a fierce determination that no setback could extinguish. Late at night, when the courtroom was empty and the world silent, Vanessa allowed herself brief moments of reflection. She thought of Gregory, her late husband, whose death had set all this in motion. She thought of Lucas, the son who had broken her trust. And she thought of the woman she was becoming, stronger, wiser, and unbreakable. The tide was turning. Vanessa was no longer the woman who had been locked out and left in the dark. She was the one holding the keys now, ready to open doors to a new beginning. The courtroom was silent except for the steady voice of the judge reading the verdict. Vanessa sat with her back straight, hands clasped calmly in her lap, a quiet fire burning behind her eyes. Years of pain, sacrifice, and betrayal had all led to this moment. The judge's words confirmed what Vanessa already knew deep inside. Justice was finally hers. The deed to the house was restored, the fraudulent documents voided. Lucas and Jessica were held accountable for their deceit. The room filled with a mixture of shock and relief, but Vanessa remained poised, untouched by the emotions swirling around her. Lucas stared down at the floor, his bravado stripped away. What he didn't understand was that this defeat was more than legal, it was personal. He had underestimated the strength of the woman who had loved him from the beginning, who had fought battles no one could see. He had believed money and manipulation could erase decades of love and sacrifice. He was wrong. Vanessa rose slowly from her seat, her steps steady and sure as she walked out of the courtroom. The cameras flashed, but she ignored them. This was not a victory for fame or revenge. It was a triumph of dignity, resilience, and unshakable spirit. Back in her reclaimed home, Vanessa allowed herself a moment of quiet. She touched the worn edges of the walls that had witnessed her happiest and darkest days. This house was more than bricks and mortar. It was a symbol of endurance. She had weathered the storms, and now the calm was hers to keep. She thought of Gregory, his laughter, his dreams, and his unwavering support. She thought of Lucas, not as a son lost, but as a lesson learned. And she thought of herself, the woman who refused to be broken, who refused to be forgotten. The future stretched out before her, uncertain but promising. Vanessa knew there would be challenges ahead, but they would never be greater than the strength she had discovered within. She had played her last card, and she had won.